Now to discuss this, KT McFarland, Fox News national security expert, and Christian, Whiton, a former State Department official. Thanks to both of you for joining us. Christian, let me start with you. What do we do about the problem of what's going on in Minneapolis?
Well, I think you'll do a couple of things. First of all, it recognizes that we do need to profile people, not based on the color of their skin, but based on their behavior. You know, the threat is real. If you look at the Boston Marathon bombing, we didn't think much about Chechnya before that, but this was someone of Chechen extraction, the older boy and his brother, and who had traveled to Chechnya. We also, frankly, can help by recognizing we have this tremendous asset they don't have in Europe, which are average Americans who have the right to keep and bear arms. John Boehner and Mitch McConnell should get off their posteriors and pass what's called national reciprocity. If you have a license to carry a concealed weapon in one state, you should be allowed to carry it in any state, and then we can have average citizens helping cops.
KT, Marie Hart from the State Department was ridiculed mercilessly online when she went on television and said that a lot of what's driving this are economic factors and jobs would solve the problem. When you look at the situation in Minneapolis, they say that a lot of folks there that are radicalized, it happens because they've come to America and then do not find economic opportunity and are looking for a purpose and a direction. Do you buy that argument?
No. You know, if it was poverty that was creating terrorists, then a country like India would be one of the most terrorist countries in the world, and it's not. There are a whole number of things that drive this, and I guess what I find so frustrating is that you either have the reaction of people to say, oh, Mall of America, we have to worry about homegrown terrorists, or you see the bombings in Europe and you say, oh, well, we've got to worry about that, or we could see ISIS take over large swaths of Syria and Iraq. This is all part of a much bigger problem, and the problem is to recognize the existential threat of our time is radical Islamic jihad, and it needs a comprehensive program to deal with it. It needs a law enforcement part. It may need an economic part. It needs a military part. It needs an alliance part, and it needs the ability to cut off the funding of the people who are doing this to us. I look at the administration, and the president either is unable to see this, or he sees it and he's not willing to do anything about it, or frankly, he's in over his head. And I think it's probably a combination of all three. We will eventually have to deal with radical Islam. I just hope we do it before they get their hands on more serious weapons.
Okay, Christian, do you agree with that?
I do. The economic factors just aren't the compelling thing here. There's an ideology at work. It seems crazy to us that people would look at ISIS or the Taliban and say, I want that. But the myth they say, this lie about the past, and as an Arab ambassador said, this lie about a future that will never be, is appealing to people who lack direction, and so we need to confront the ideology.
But KT, you look at the president and how much time he has left in office. It does feel to many like he's committed to doing the least possible that he can in this war, what we're currently doing. Where does that leave us?
I think the president...
Go ahead.
You know, I think you're right. You know, he's checked out. This is just not his fight. He's just not going to recognize it as a problem, and whatever plan he's going to come up with isn't going to be enough to solve it. So maybe it's a job summit. Maybe it's throwing another couple of thousand troops into the Middle East. None of those things are sufficient to deal with a much more existential problem. You know, we laugh at that and say, oh, ISIS, you think you're going to have a caliphate to take over the world? Well, they're convinced that that's the world they're going to achieve, and they're going to kill anybody who stands in the way, Christians, Jews, atheists, other Muslims. And the question I have is how, in this new world, do we deter, do we prevent, do we take care of a problem that is going to plague us for a generation? And I don't see any answers coming out of this administration.
Thanks to both of you.